Is there a future for sports radio? I mean, over the past however many years that we've been involved in this, certainly you and I and John to an for an awful long period of time too. I never contemplated the end of sports radio. I never contemplated whether it would last, whether it would survive. You could say, well, it will have ups and downs. Maybe there were too many sports radio stations. You could make that argument. But if you really look at it, from the heydays when we were essentially in play to where we are
for
now,
a long time, the only game in town.
Well, yeah, we were what, the third or fourth in North America?
Yeah, I think
to launch.
Third, yeah, third, I believe.
And so we were at the beginning, but in the interim, I mean, the phenomenon grew like wildfire. Do you remember how many stations there were in North America and US particularly?
Oh,
Hundreds, maybe
I want to
1,000.
say 350. I want to say there were at least 350.
There you go. 350 radio stations in the United States doing all sports. And then gradually it grew in Canada to where virtually every major market, if not every major market, had an all sports station. But that's now been pared back. There are far fewer today, and they have far less influence. And I'm led to believe that the ratings for these stations, including the one we worked at, aren't anywhere near what was achieved back in our time. And it makes me wonder whether this is a diminishing asset. What do you think?
Well, yes, I think it is a diminishing asset. I think that local is still, and maybe I'm hanging on to an old adage here, but I believe that as people get older, local becomes far more important to them, whether it's traffic and the weather or sports discussion about your favorite teams in real time. In fairness, I don't listen a ton to either one of the sports stations in Toronto. I mean, I'm outside Toronto. If I'm in the car, I'll tune in from time to time, but I'm way outside the demo as we are. I used to think nothing would make radio go away. And now it's like, okay, how do you keep within the framework of making sure your income is more than your outgo? And as advertisers split away, not that there was this huge bucket of advertisers for sports radio at any time, because sports radio never picks up national business the way the FM stations do. So the Bay never advertised on the Fan. Coca-Cola never advertised on the Fan. And so those national accounts aren't there. From a strictly dollars and cents perspective, I think they're in for a tough time.
But two things there that jumped out. First of all, is there a misnomer that sports radio was cheap to produce, or was it cheap to produce?
No,
Comparative to other,
it's most expensive format, far more expensive than an FM station.
Okay, so why?
Well,
forget about, don't say right. Sports rights mean nothing. So I'm not worried about having the Jays or the Raptors.
Sports rights mean something because sports rights still form the basis of a lot of the programming on sports radio stations. So rights do factor in, but when we were there, it was very people intensive. Every show had one host or two. Every show had a producer. Every show had somebody sitting behind the board. So when you start that's where a lot of the cost. And paying the other people to appear on the radio station.
Sure.
Guys like you.
So now, and the other thing was you said you're outside the demo. What the heck is the demo?
Oh, we like you, Nelson. You went.
You hit mute, Nelson.
You hit mute there. We'll get you hit mute back on, and we'll continue. There
Sorry,
you go.
I've never used a computer before. The demo for sports radio traditionally was 25 to 54.
Male.
The heart of the sweet spot was 35 to 54. And at one time, that was the demo we led in that demo, male or, more male than female for sure. At that time, it was probably 80-20 in any given ratings book. So, do I care about sports the same way I used to? Not really. I'm almost 70. So there comes a time when been there, done that, got the t-shirt. I'm semi-interested. And I think the passion that we all used to have, or I used to have, ebbs away for some, for other things.
Mm.
So the demo is still 35 to 54. That's the advertiser's sweet spot. But I think that's the demo that's probably been fragmented the most through all the other platforms.
Well, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. The other reality is that when the Fan launched in 1992,
So it's almost the 40th anniversary coming up, right? Because it was Labor Day of
September 4th, 92.
Yeah, so it's a month to the 40th anniversary.
yeah, which is unbelievable. But if you look at the lineup in those early days, now it changed because there were some people that were brought in. Nobody had ever done it. So there were a few people who were brought in that weren't good at it, or it didn't fit their wheel spot. But almost all of them were people from the print media or television. And so they were known commodities. They had a brand of some sort, some more than others. But there was almost nobody that was brought in at the beginning, Nelson, from anywhere like another station, because there were no other sports formats.
The first morning show host was Mike Inglis. And Mike came in from Indianapolis.
He was a
Yeah,
Winnipeg guy, but
Winnipeg guy, but came in. He was doing play-by-play for the Pacers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than that, it was people who had been with the radio station. Joe Bowen, Barb DiGiulio, Mike Hogan came in, a few years in. But you're right, Damien Cox and Mary Ormsby and Steve Paikin did. They had, so we had those resources to pull from, and those companies were looking for extra brand recognition. So it was, and then I cut a deal with TSN for the bullpen with Mike Hogan and all the people that appeared on TSN.